Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Going to wait a few minutes for some people to start tuning in before we get started, but welcome, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful evening. Hope the process has been treating you well. It's been nice to see a lot of people posting about their percentages increasing and having success, and that the group helped them. Hopefully it will, this Q&A will help you and help lots of people. Just gonna wait till we get a few people in here, get some questions rolling. Hey, everyone. Great to see you all. Let's see here. Make sure we're all set up and running. You guys are very welcome. Thank you for all the thanks. We'll go ahead and jump right in and get started now. First question. How do you know you have a diagnosis for a claim? Usually, if you go to the doctor for an ailment, you get some type of diagnosis. So really, you need to read your medical records and see what you've been diagnosed with and go from there. You need to read your medical records. If it's VA medical records, they have it on a problem list. And you can look at the problem list if you look under My Healthy Vet and see what the list of your problems were, what the list of your problems are, and what you've been diagnosed with. Can you dispute your CMP exam that was conducted by a VA doctor? And if so, to whom? Is it typical for the VA to schedule you for a CMP exam and then make a decision without actually conducting the actual exam? Yes, you can dispute a CMP exam. The first thing I would do would be to, if you have problems with the CMP exam, would be to write the VA immediately. The day of the exam, after you get out of the exam, as soon as possible after the exam, write the VA or have your agent or VSO attorney send a note to the VA about the exam. If you have a question about the doctor's credentials, you can dispute that. So I would dispute it to the regional office. But if it's conducted by a VA doctor, you can also call the director's office of the VA Medical Center, or you can ask for the chief of staff of the medical team, who's ever the decision maker at the VA hospital. Try to get in contact with them. I know the director's office is accessible and will probably lead you in the right direction. But you want to complain about that exam as soon as possible after the exam. Once you have a decision, and then you complain about the exam, it's probably too late at that point. If you have issues with the exam, you want to state them up front and you want to make them clear and plain. Is it typical for the VA to schedule you for a CMP exam and then make a decision without actually conducting the actual exam. The VA does have a process called the ACE process, or ACE exams, where they just send your medical records to a provider to review and give a medical opinion without actually seeing you in person. That is a valid way to do things in the VA's eyes. It would be just like you getting a private provider to do a medical opinion. But if you want to dispute, I have disputed such exams for my clients before by writing the VA and saying, look, my veteran has issues that he wants to bring up to the examiner in person, and he would prefer a in-person exam so he can add testimony to his claim. It has worked sometimes it hasn't. But if you have things that you feel like you want to bring up to the examiner in person, you want to let the VA know that as soon as possible. Do you have to have a CMP exam done when filing for IU? The VA considers a request for unemployability to be a request for increase in your disabilities. So most times they will schedule a CMP for IU. There are select times where they won't, and that's up to the decision maker. But usually, unless you filed a fully developed claim with enough evidence and a statement from a doctor, vocational expert that you can't work or something like that, they're going to go ahead and schedule CMP exams. There seems to be a shortage of providers on the military base. They're all quitting for some reason. With that being said, we are getting drive-by appointments, literally 5-minute sessions. How can I, as an active duty soldier, ensure my medical concerns are properly notated? This is a good question. A very good question. What I suggest is going to your appointments with a written list of your concerns. So the doctor can see, when the doctor comes in, if you only have 5 minutes, the doctor can see everything you're concerned about. Most times the doctor will literally take what you have written for them and transcribe that into your medical record. So if you're still active duty, I would take a list of my concerns and take that into the doctor, written list of concerns. I would also suggest making another appointment. Keep making appointments until your issues are addressed, all of them. It's important to get it recorded while you're active duty and get as much recorded while you're active duty. So you being this proactive is a very good thing. But do make sure that all your concerns are met. If you have to go to a civilian doctor or urgent care or something like that to get them notated, please do while you're active duty. Take pictures. Let your fellow military members know about your conditions, the ones that, like you're snoring. Hey, roommate, have you heard me snoring before? Would you be willing to write a letter? Have you heard me gasping for air? Do you remember when I broke my foot? That type of thing. Go ahead and start gathering evidence before you get out. Those things will be very helpful down the road. I'm rated for ankylosing spondylitis at 10% because my range of motion is decent for the condition. I, however, have chronic pain and fatigue that I feel should be rated much higher than 10%. Am I out of luck because of the way they rate AS? or is it possible for me to make a claim for pain and fatigue as secondary? You can make a claim for chronic pain syndrome, which is also known as somatic symptom disorder, or fatigue as secondary. And or fatigue as secondary. Yes, you can do those things, and I would do them as soon as possible. Make sure that you're going to the doctor for your chronic pain. But the VA rates chronic pain in most cases as a mental health condition. And so that is a valid secondary claim. Good evening, Carmella. I'm still awaiting my decision. My case went to remand for C&P, which I had it in September. It was determined that it was least likely than not 50% or better in December. My attorney submitted a 14-page Nexus letter. That sounds like it's a very good thing, and it's going to be granted in your favor. Why the long wait? Remands take a long time. I was looking at the average, because I had this question so many times. The last live video I did, I was looking at the average on the Monday morning report of the VA puts out every Monday, and it's like 500 days for remands. It's the average right now. And so it's ridiculously long wait. There is no excuse for it. It's ridiculous. And your attorney might have some ways to push that forward, or they might not. I mean, it's a long line in front of you. So if you're suffering from any type of hardship, you want to let the VA know and ask that your claim go ahead and be decided. I like to paper the record. If my claims are being held up for my clients, I send a letter to the VA every 30 days. Look, this is unreasonable. This is what the law says. Can we move this along, please? I don't say it like that, but that's pretty much what I say in so many tactful words. Getting ready to appeal one decision and file a new claim. Awesome. Awesome. I wish you the best. Typically, how long does it take for the VA to process and complete claims flagged for hardship? That's a good question. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't seen much the claims flagged for hardship, unless it's a terminally ill veteran, go much faster than regular claims. That's just the truth. There's so many hardship requests that they just don't move very swiftly these days for hardship requests. So I would assume it's still going to take 3 to 4 months. I just had a terminally ill veteran, God bless his soul, passed away on December 1st. And we put in his claim in September. And it wasn't decided by the time that he passed away. And I alerted everybody at the regional office that he was terminally ill. And now his wife is having to substitute for his claim and complete his claim. But the sad truth is that hardship claims really don't get pushed as much as they should. If you dispute your initial claim to the next higher level and it gets denied, can you go back and do a supplemental? Yes, the answer is yes. But to do that supplemental, you need new and relevant evidence. The VA has not necessarily defined relevant yet, but new is something they haven't seen before. So you need new and relevant evidence, something that tends to disprove approve or disprove a fact that was at issue before in the claim. Could you please explain the deferred process and the typical turnaround on that type of decision? I would give it another, if your decision has been deferred I would give it another 2 to 3 months for a decision. They basically, most times in a deferral, they're going back out to the examiner who conducted your exam and asking for some type of clarification. Just the day I had one of my clients, the doctor did an ankle exam, and they rated one of his ankles, and then they rated both of his ankles, but they gave him 0% for one and sent it back out to ask the doctor about pain in the process and that type of thing, because the doctor didn't remark on that. And so a lot of times they're just looking for clarifications from the doctor. I've seen lots of mental health cases go back to the examiner because the examiner doesn't record things directly. I've had cases go back because the doctor diagnoses one thing and then writes something else in the rationale why it's less likely than not, and they're what they write in the exam portion of the examination doesn't match up with the medical opinion portion of the examination. And so the rater has to get clarification. Sometimes raters are just splitting hairs and asking ridiculous questions back, things that they should know or things that they should be able to go ahead and make a decision on. Unfortunately, that happens, but I would definitely afterwards, if it gets denied, I would go see what that clarification was. I would get my records and see what kind of clarification was asked for, what the examiner missed, and what happened in the situation. So my answer on that is probably in the time frame of 2 to 3 months. It all depends on how long it takes, in most cases, the examiner to get back to the VA about the decision. So I have been seeing pain management for degenerative disc disease, chronic pain, and other things. Made a claim in September. Got an answer for them last week. They lowered my secondary claim to my low back pain from 40 to 0, although my records and physical appearance show that it's not getting better. Boo. I don't see the rest of that question, but what I would do in this case, with the fact that you've given me, is I would immediately request a personal hearing that will stop the reduction or will halt the reduction until you get that hearing, and then they will make a decision from there. If they still reduce, you will have to pay back any money that was paid to you over the months until the hearing happened. But if it does not get reduced, you get to keep those funds and your rating doesn't get reduced. And reductions, the law says there has to be long-term or sustained improvement. These decisions that are making all these wayward deductions and large reductions like that off of one exam, in my opinion, aren't following the law and aren't meeting the standard of the law. That's my opinion. And I bet a lot of other agents, PSOs, and attorneys would say the same thing. And that would be my argument. There's no long-term improvement. I would send them all the records from pain management, see if my pain management doctor will write a letter. I'd write my own statement and get that reduction turned around. Follow-ups fails, just put, you can either submit a supplemental claim once the decision is final, because right now it's just a proposal. I'm assuming if 30 days haven't passed or 60 days haven't passed, it's just a proposal. You could put in a new claim for increase. Actually, you could do that during the time of the proposal, and that's one way to beat the VA, and get a new CMP while it's happening. And so I would definitely fight that reduction. Don't let them reduce your percentage without fighting back. If one turns in a DBQ and a Nexus done by my private doctor, Will the VA still require a CMP examination? Some cases they do, in some cases they don't. If you submit it as a fully developed claim and you give them all the information that they need, they should not need to schedule a CMP examination. The people that go out and schedule and initially look at your claim are not necessarily raters. There's sometimes lower level people who don't understand the ins and outs of the laws, the regulations, and the procedures of the VA. And so they will go out and just, because a claim was submitted, they will schedule an examination. I think that they have to have the VA's opinion on it. That's not the case. The VA shouldn't have to schedule an exam, but if they do schedule an exam, you need to attend it. Don't let anybody tell you not to attend the exam. That's bad advice. Attend the exam, and you just have to, advocate for yourself. You are your own best advocate during the exam. So let the doctor know what's hurting, what's bothering you, and go from there. Can you claim high blood pressure when in Vietnam and exposed to Agent Orange and have had it for years after getting out? Yes, you can claim high blood pressure, also known as hypertension. You can likely tie it to Vietnam with a good Nexus letter. It's not one of the presumptive conditions. They're talking about putting it on the list, but they haven't done it yet. But it's definitely a claimable condition if you are boots on the ground or, blue Navy veteran, blue water veteran, or anything like that. It's definitely a valid claim. Hello. Is it advisable to create a binder and tab out your records prior to your initial appointment with the VSO? Thank you, ma'am. That's always, anything you can make simpler for your VSO or the VA is advisable. So yes, I would advise that. I would advise, you are your own best advocate. I would advise knowing your record yourself. Going in educated about what you want to claim, educated about the process. And a lot of times VSOs are overburdened and overworked, and they have a long line of veterans. And anything you can make simpler for them would help the process and help your process. After submitting a Form 9 for an appeal for TDIU, how long does it normally take to get a decision if you ask for a hearing at the local regional office? You submitted a Form 9, but you asked for a hearing at the local regional office. I think what you're trying to say is you asked for a board hearing, and that's probably going to take, at this rate, the rate they're going now, they're trying to hurry all legacy, and they projected they will finish them by July 2020. I don't see that happening personally with the long line of appeals they have, and what it will take to finish them. But the answer to your question is probably 1 to 2 years. That's how long it will take to probably get to a hearing. And then you have to wait after that for a decision. Then if it gets remanded or something like that, you're going to have to wait longer. So be prepared to stand by on that type of situation. Question. I submitted a claim for PTSD personal trauma in late December 2019. And on eBenefits and VA.gov, it's showing that my claim will not be reviewed until November 2020 and October 2021. What would take the VA nearly 2 years to review? I would not trust the timelines on eBenefits or VA.gov. It's likely going to be reviewed before that. The VA, especially on initial claims, is moving much faster than they have in years past. Much faster means claims are getting done in 3 to 4 months rather than 2 to 3 years. So I would not trust that timeline, and it's probably going to be updated once it moves to the next stage. I have 90% combined rating and made a mistake getting a lawyer. I wanted to file for IU, but instead the lawyer filed appeals last March. Any guidance? I can't necessarily give you guidance on that because you are represented. I would talk to your representation and find out their reasons for filing an appeal rather than filing for IU. It might be that you had a better chance of getting permanent and total, and that was your greatest chance at back pay. But it's a conversation you need to have with your representation and ask them their reasons. What was your logic? Why did that happen? And make sure that you understand it. I have PTSD and sleep apnea. Can I file sleep apnea secondary to PTSD? I have a Nexus letter from my physician. Yes, that's a valid claim. I've seen it connected many times. I've seen it denied many times. But it's one of those things that depends on the examiner you get. But with the Nexus letter, that should give you a balance of evidence, or that should overcome the reasonable doubt standard. What would the criteria for going from 30 to 50% for migraines? What would be the criteria for going from 30% to 50% for migraines? Basically, your migraines have to be very frequent, which multiple migraines weekly. They have to be prostrating, which means you have to stop activity when it happens, or go lay down, go be in a dark place, something like that, put on sunglasses. If you have to take a break from the activity that you're currently in and go somewhere or do something to break the migraine. And 3, it has to be, what do they say? Severe economic adaptability. There has to be some functional limitation that it causes. It has to affect your work. You miss days of work because of it. It affects, it's pretty much driving everything. That's what 50% migraines, the rating entails. How difficult is it to get nerve damage and polyuria secondary to diabetes? It's not that difficult. That's a very valid claim, and if you have it, I will put it in ASAP. There's lots of secondaries that come with diabetes. If you get diabetes service connected, there's all sorts of secondaries to that. What are some presumptive conditions? There's lots of presumptive conditions, but it depends on what era you were serving. For instance, the Vietnam era, I want to tell you the right thing. Vietnam era. Okay, Gulf War era. Includes undiagnosed illness and medically unexplained multi-symptom illness as defined by a cluster of chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, functional gastrointestinal disorders, fatigue, signs and symptoms involving the skin, headache, muscle, joint pain, neurological signs and symptoms. When you're talking about Agent Orange, you're talking about heart disease, diabetes, melanoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Parkinson's disease, prostate cancer, soft tissue seroma, respiratory cancers, When you're talking about Camp Lejeune, you're talking about kidney cancer, breast cancer, renal toxicity, female infertility, lung cancer, bladder cancer, leukemia. There's all sorts of presumptive conditions, and I encourage you to look more into that if you believe that you have one. I'm 100% total combined. How do I get PMT? To make a request for permanent and total status, you have to write the VA and tell them that you want to be permanent and total, and what conditions. You have to submit a specific condition that you want to be examined for permanent and total. So it should be the condition that's not static, that's not expected to improve, that you have scheduled a future exam date for. The VA schedule a future exam date for you for. Whatever condition that is, that's what you want to get re-examined. And you want to ask them to make that static or permanent, so you get permanent and total status. Have you seen migraine secondary to rhinitis? Yes. I think that's a very valid claim. Any sinus, nasal issues, whatever, cause headaches. Have you seen any claim for diabetes secondary to depression and chronic pain gets approved? I'm sure there are examples. I haven't seen it personally, but I would encourage you to search the BVA Board of Veterans Appeals database. It's public. Just Google it. BVA opinion database, and see if you can find that connection where it's been approved for somebody else, and use those decisions as a guide. There's lots of good information there. I've learned a lot just by reading other decisions. How much weight does previous court cases play in a decision? It depends if the decision was precedential or not, which means it was decided by a panel of judges, and it sets precedent for other cases. If it sets precedent for other cases, then it plays a lot in a decision. It plays a big role in a decision because the VA has to follow that as law, as regulation. And so I don't know which court case you're specifically referring to, but you can use those cases to your advantage if the VA hasn't played by the rules. If it's just a single judge application, meaning that it's not presidential, and it doesn't apply to every other case, it just applies to the case at hand, then it's not going to carry as much weight, but it can be used as an example of what can be granted or the connection you're trying to make. What are some secondary conditions with PTSD? Oh, I've seen it runs the gambit. It can have PTSD can have an effect on a number of conditions. So I don't want to start naming stuff, but I guess two of the most common things that I see are headaches and sleep apnea secondary to PTSD. But there are a whole host of other conditions. I mean, it can cause joint pain because you're depressed, you're not getting out and about. It can cause all types of secondary conditions. Again, search the BVA database and see what you can find. I got approved for diabetes secondary to PTSD. There's a great example right there. So yes, it's possible. My appeal was put in last March for increase. Does it take over a year? I'm seeing appeals come back in around a year right now. Around a year. So if it's been over a year, if March is coming up, I would expect a decision around April or May. But remember, this is my projected timeline. The VA is not bound to it at all. I had an appeal going under a certain diagnosis for my back since 2016, but my VSO filed a supplemental claim and changed the name to just lumbosacral strain, is the name change going to affect the effective date? It should not. Those are the same thing. The VA is by regulation should interpret all claims sympathetically and read all claims sympathetically, because the veteran is not a medical professional. So that simple change is not going to change much. I have a sleep study and a letter from a civilian doctor stating he ordered CPAP but can't seem to find the actual notes that says obstructive sleep apnea or where my CPAP was ordered. It was 10 years ago. Should I seek more evidence somehow before submitting? Usually with civilian doctors don't hold on to medical records more than 11 years. At least I know that's true for the state of North Carolina. I don't know about other states. But I would seek out those records as soon as possible if it's been 10 years ago. But should I seek more evidence somehow before submitting? I think if you have a letter from a civilian doctor, and you have a CPAP, maybe you should do a sworn statement saying you have those things. You've already had a study. But the VA is likely going to schedule you for another sleep study if they can't find a sleep study on file. So that should not stop you from submitting, but be prepared to go through another sleep study if you don't have the actual note or some VA notes that say you already have sleep apnea. Even if it's a supplemental claim, I'm not sure what that's referring to. If you're talking about your appeal, should appeal take over a year if it's a supplemental claim? Most supplemental claims are getting decided in about 4 to 5 months right now. So it probably shouldn't take a year. I was rated 40% for fibromyalgia and arthritis. Arthritis shouldn't have been rated on 2 separate codes. Shouldn't they have been rated on 2 separate codes? It depends on whether they share symptoms and what part of the bodies it affects. If it shares symptoms and that type of thing, then the VA is going to rate them, to combine them and rate them together. What is the average time for the VA to do their audit after DFAS has done theirs? I'm still waiting on my additional 60% retro pay since December after getting my retro pay for 20%. I'm getting CRDP pay. Thanks. I've seen it take anywhere from 90 days to 6 months. So it's no specific time frame. Once the DFAS sends it back to the VA, theoretically you should be at the other end of the process and it shouldn't take more than 60 days, but sometimes it takes longer than that. Why? It just doesn't make sense. Can you explain sworn statements and buddy statements? Yes, sworn statements are statements pretty much under oath. Use that language under the statement or after you make the statement. Swearing that you're telling the truth. Buddy statements are statements from your fellow military members you serve with, just stating that they saw, experienced, heard, know certain things about you and your conditions. That's all it is. You want them to be as detailed as possible, painstakingly detailed. Those are more credible than just saying, I saw him snore one day, or I remember he had a broken toe and signing it and sending it off. It needs to be as detailed as possible, especially if there's no medical records that back it up. Can the VA reduce your rating in PTSD if you put in sleep apnea claim? What is the website for the BVA database? The website for the BVA database is bva.va.gov, and then there on the right hand side you'll see a section that says search decisions. Here's a direct link to it. That's the direct link to the BVA database. But otherwise, if you just type in bva.va.gov, you're going to come to the Board of Veterans Appeals page, and there on your right hand side under resources, you're going to see an option that says search decisions, and you just click that and keep going. How can I become an accredited service officer? I can't tell you about becoming a VSO because I'm not a VSO. I tried that and the process was just, it seemed like it was just closed doors. And so if you're a member of DAV or Veteran of Foreign Wars or Wounded Warrior Project, anything like that, if you're a member, you might want to ask them about becoming a service officer. But the process for becoming a claims agent is pretty straightforward. You just need to fill out the application, provide 3 references. They're going to do a very thorough background check, every aspect of pretty much your life. It's a federal background check to make sure you are a solid individual to help with claims. Then you're going to have to take a test, and if you pass that test, you become a claims agent. During my background check, they even asked about me adminning these Facebook groups and stuff like that. I mean, it was extremely detailed type of background check. And the test, I've heard some say, to me, it was not that hard, but I've heard some say it's not the easiest test because it deals with you're stuffing a whole bunch of law into about 30 questions. And so they can really ask you just about anything you need to know it all. But that's how you become an accredited claims agent. A service officer, you will need to ask some service officers about that. If we have any VSOs listening or in the group, please answer this question to help him or her learn how to become an accredited service officer. Why is it so hard to get a Nexus letter? Mental health. It seems like there are a lot of predatory scam companies on the internet. I wish it were easier. I wish they didn't cost so much. The only good trend I'm seeing, I don't want to say the only, but one good trend I'm seeing in this respect is that there are more companies popping up or more doctors popping up willing to do Nexus letters. And eventually the competition is going to drive the price down. The more competition should lead to lower prices. But when there's only a few people doing them, they're charging outrageous prices like 5-6 times your increase and things like that. I would never sign a contract like that. That's ridiculous. I'm rated 10% for my knees. Recently, my knees are getting real bad with arthritis. would this be a secondary claim for my knees? I also have back, hip issues. Do I need a claim? Do I need a claim? I would definitely file those back, hip issues secondary to your knees. You can claim instability secondary to your knees if your knees lock up, give out, feel like they're going out, that type of thing. And they'll give you another exam for them, but pretty much the 10% encompasses pain, which is what you're going to get for arthritis. I hope that answers your question. Hello, ma'am. Could you recommend an accredited agent to help with my case? It's hard for me to get a hold of my BSO. Thank you. Off the top of my head, there are two of our admins, other than me, are accredited agents, Shelton Holden and Richard Evans. But there's a whole list of them in the file section of this group. I definitely encourage you to go down that list, see if there's some in your area, or even if they're not in your area, accredited agent can represent you from anywhere, and see if they will help you or represent you. I have my appeal coming up in May. How long should I expect to get a decision? It depends on how long it's been in. Depends on how long it's been in. That's not necessarily telling me how long it's been in. If it's been in since last May and you didn't choose to get a hearing, you should probably be hearing something within a year or at the year point. That's when most of my BVA decisions are coming back, or DRO review processes. After a CMP and you request your report and notice the evaluator put unfound truths and personal allegations, does this make the CMP exam non-valid? No, not necessarily. The VA has a regulation that the examiner is presumed to be competent unless you challenge that the examiner's credentials, and you can ask for their credentials, you can challenge their credentials, and find them in some way unfit to make the medical determination. But whatever you found that was untruthful or was a personal allegation, you want to write out a statement, be detailed about how that's not true or how it's a personal allegation, and try to counteract that CMP exam. You can also get your own private exam and try to counteract that CMP exam. But the CMP exam is not going to be found not valid, unless you challenge that examiner's credentials. Sorry for the long post. No problem. I have the following ratings: 10% for hernia, 10% for my left and right knees, 10% for asthma, 10% for tinnitus, 10% for urticaria, also claimed as edema. I'm trying to get SC service connected for sleep apnea. I've done the home and office sleep study. Should I try for a connection to one of these or take a more systematic approach? Just from what you've written, and I don't have all the facts in your case, I haven't reviewed your file and that type of thing. So this is off the top of the dome, straight, no chaser. I would try to link it to the asthma. That sounds like the most, if you don't have service records that say that you had sleep problems in service and that type of thing, or buddy statements, whatever, I would try to link it to the asthma. That's your easiest route of service connection. If you are PNT, TDIU, and was diagnosed with sleep apnea but was not seen in the military service with sleep apnea, can you still get service connection? If you can prove it's secondary to something, it's just not. If you don't have any records or statements or anything connecting it to military service, it's just not going to get willy-nilly service connected. It has to be connected to something that's already service connected. So you could possibly put in a secondary claim. But I don't know that you want to mess with your unemployability. That's totally up to you. Do you know how many cases are with the BVA right now? I don't off the top of my head, but the VA puts out something every Monday morning called a Monday morning workload report. You can Google that and pull it right up, and it will tell you what's going on across the whole VA, how many cases each regional office has. It's very detailed in the breakdown and that type of thing. So if you're looking for those numbers, do some research on the VA website, and you could definitely find some resources that will give you the lay of the land for BVA cases and how many there are right now. I claimed hearing but missed the VA test, and the VSO said I need a Nexus to reschedule. Is there another way? Yes. If you missed your hearing test, you can file a supplemental claim. On that supplemental claim, you would need to write, I'm ready to report for my hearing exam, and claim it again. Put whatever you claimed, whether it's bilateral hearing loss, tinnitus, ear pain, whatever you claimed, and write, I'm ready to report for my exam. Please reschedule. And that should be enough to get you another exam. When requesting a higher level review, I know you can't submit new evidence, but can you write a statement requesting that they look at specific documentation? This is where it gets kind of in a gray area, but the VA says that you can submit argument, not evidence, during a higher level review or for a higher level review. A lot of times I will write out my argument for the high level reviewer. And so if it's already in your record and you just want to highlight facts for the higher level reviewer, then yes, you can submit a statement doing just that. All righty, that looks like all the questions we have for tonight. It's been a joy, guys and gals. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to doing more of these in the future. I wish you all the best in your claims process. Remember that if you're watching this back on replay, that I did this live, so I'm not going to be answering, more questions when you're watching it back. But I will try to get to your questions if I can, if I have time to get to them, individually. But otherwise, I wish you the best in the claims process. Take care. Be blessed.